It was at an early age. It was, when I was 13 reading muscle and fitness magazines that my dad would bring home for me. And then it was Muscle Builder Power, I believe was the name, is Joe Weider's magazines. But he would have scientists writing articles. So as a 13-year-old, I was reading about muscle fiber type and how many grams of protein you should, be eating, and metabolism in the magazines. In fact, as an editor now, I would say those articles were probably a bit too scientific for most people, to really, but for me, I really gravitated towards that and was like, wow, there's a science here and people are studying this. And so I originally wanted to be a doctor. As a kid, I had one of those doctor kits, literally carried that thing around everywhere I went for years, really I wanted to be an MD. That was what I wanted to do. But then like you said, as I got into weightlifting and realized that there was a science here, I was like, so I went into exercise science, at University of Connecticut. Got my doctorate eventually, but at University of Connecticut is where I started this, this science push. But then I was just intending to go into academia and study, how muscles grow and how to lose body fat, metabolism, and those sorts of things. So I went from UConn to Auburn to Georgia Southern, back to UConn, where I got my PhD, and then Yale School of Medicine, where I did my postdoctoral fellowship. And at Yale, I'm in the Department of Cellular Molecular Physiology doing research on how exercise and nutrition affects your genes, right? And so I was an award-winning scientist, won awards, I had a good career ahead of me, a bright future. And I was writing articles for Muscle and Fitness. I was taking the research I was doing in the lab and applying it to what that means in the gym and what it means for your nutrition. And the editors loved what I was doing, and they offered me a position as the science editor for the magazines. And so I left academia to go work for Muscle and Fitness and these magazines, these fitness magazines. And, all my colleagues were floored. They were literally worried that I had gone crazy because I'm giving up this academic career to go work for these, bodybuilding magazines. They just couldn't understand. And I'm like, no, the whole reason I got into science was because of bodybuilding. And so I see this as my way of giving back and being able to take what's happening in the lab, which is amazing. I love doing lab work, but it's only going into a publication that nobody can read. Few people read those studies, right? Honestly, few people read those studies. And so here I see a way to take that research, as I was doing already, taking my own research and converting it into something that was usable. Well, what does this mean? What can how do you train? How do you eat? Well, here's some research that suggests maybe you try this, right? And so I saw that as sort of my calling, understanding the research and being able to sort of filter it down to what a 16-year-old can understand, because I remembered myself reading those magazines as a 13-year-old, right? And so I would write to myself as a 13-year-old. That's who I was writing to. And so instead of using all these big words, scientific, I simplified it, and the readers, they loved it. So anyway, I left academia for Muscle and Fitness and Flex magazines, and I started writing articles, workouts, and supplement tips. And, right now, everybody's like, what's this Muscle and Fitness magazine? But we're talking 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, there was no social media. There was barely an internet. There was an internet, but few people were on it at the time, right? So you read the magazines. Muscle and Fitness was the title if you wanted to learn training as far as population based. There was something like 40 million readers worldwide were reading those magazines. So you think about that, 40 million people were reading my articles, were doing my workouts. And so that built up a following, worldwide following, a massive following in India and in the Middle East, all over the world. In fact, I was on a train in Italy going to, I think, Milan once a few years ago, and somebody recognized me on the train. You know what I mean? I built up this audience that loved the way that I took the information and crafted it for them to be able to understand. And it worked. The workouts, they were getting responses. And then I went on to bodybuilding.com, from the magazines, the internet starting to happen. So this is again, like 2003, 4, right? The internet was just starting to pick up. And at that time, bodybuilding.com was the biggest supplement distributor in the world. Okay. And one of the biggest platforms for education on fitness and training. Millions and millions of people were going there, and bodybuilding.com reached out to me to start doing work for them, videos. This is all free. I saw this opportunity to speak to this other audience, and, people were like, why are you doing this stuff for free? I'm like, well, I have a job. I can't have a second job. So I'm just doing this. And then we're converting those videos back to muscle and fitness because people are watching them on bodybuilding. It says, go to muscleandfitness.com for more Jim Stoppani stuff. So it was a great combination because it was helping the magazines. It was helping the internet. I was building, an audience, and from there I had this massive audience, and they started, I was giving them supplement advice on what to take. And they started asking, well, when are you going to come out with your own supplement line? That was never a thought before. I mean, obviously I thought I was going into academia as well. So a lot of things switched. But then, I realized, I have an audience who has a need. They can't trust the supplements that are out there. This is back in 2007, 8, 9, getting into 2010 now. And what was happening in the supplement industry was, in the pre-workout category, I had to review these pre-workouts, right? And positively. That was my job at the magazine. I had to give a positive review on these. And I couldn't do that because what they were doing was they were creating these pre-workouts that were 3 or 5 gram serving sizes. The scoops were these tiny little scoops. And what was worse than that was that they were telling people the reason why there's so little in there is that it was concentrated. So it would have like 500 milligrams of branched chain amino acids, which does nothing. That you might as well put nothing in there, right? But they're telling people that 500 milligrams is the same as 5 grams in somebody else's pre-workout, which is complete BS. Once you have amino acid powders, let's take leucine, for example, it's concentrated down already to its lowest form. You cannot concentrate leucine anymore without losing leucine, right? So they were literally lying. And that's when I literally had enough. And I said, okay, I'm going to do what my, fans are suggesting, and I'm going to start a supplement line. Okay. I'm not a businessman. I worked with somebody at the magazine, Mike McErlane, who's now my business partner. We worked together on this and launched PreJym. And at the time, nobody had seen a pre-workout. Again, for all the people who have just started, who've maybe been working out using supplements for the last 5 years or so, you probably have no idea what PreJym is, but the pre-workouts that you have today are because of PreJym. I corrected that category. And again, I'm not trying to, be a pompous ass here, but, that category was going down with lies and, those tiny little serving. It was all just stimulants. And, we know that if you take certain true ingredients, beta-alanine, creatine, betaine, branched chains, in the right amount at the right time, they can provide benefits. So pre-workout is not about stimulants. Sure, caffeine is a good idea to take. It increases muscle strength, increases focus and drive. But if you need to literally get cracked out before your workout, I think you're doing something wrong. And so, the PreJym this is back, we launched this in 2013. The supplement industry was completely different than it is today. And like I said, today, if you look at most pre-workouts, they're like a 20 gram, 18 gram, 25 gram scoop. Like I said, because of PreJym. And again, not trying to be pompous here, but PreJym, when we launched that, it became the #1 product at bodybuilding.com. And again, bodybuilding.com means nothing today, but in 2013 and 14, bodybuilding.com was the way 90% of people bought their supplements, at least in those that are hardcore trainers. So it was the #1 product sold at bodybuilding.com in their heyday. Okay. So that and the entire world looked at what the number 10 best-selling products were on bodybuilding.com, because that means that they wanted to sell them. So, that launch of PreJym really changed the supplement industry and, brought so many people to me because they finally saw, if you take proper nutrients, and the right amount of caffeine with other ingredients, you're going to get that pick me up without getting a crash through your workouts. And people loved the way they felt on PreJym. And like I said, it really kickstarted who I am today.
Yeah, I think there'll be a good portion of the audience that can remember the bodybuilding.com days, right? And, you mentioned it was the number one place where people bought their supplements. At one point, it was probably the biggest training hub with the, library of programs that they had, which I know you've had feature programs and workouts on there for years. There was the forums, which was kind of social media before social media. You got to connect with other people. You got to share stories. Like, it was just a community of just people that were out there getting after it.